Let's go ahead and start with you sharing a little bit about um, what led you to do this year of fear.
Well, I wasn't really led to do the year of fear. I was kind of forced into it.
How's that?
So the year of fear really revolved around my involvement in Toastmasters. So just give some background on that. The first time I ever went to a Toastmasters meeting was during undergraduate school, and my professor was a member, and she thought that it would be a good experience to have her students to visit a meeting. And of course, I was nervous, and I ended up giving a 2 minute impromptu speech at that meeting. And after I did that, I knew that somehow that being a part of that organization would be a big part of me really coming to terms with my speech. Now, that was 2006 or 7. I actually didn't join Toastmasters until 2015. And during that gap, I had visited several clubs and intended to join, but at that time, like, I couldn't deal with the amount of anxiety that I was still having. So I started after graduate after graduate school. I started a job at ABB, which is a software company, and that was 2013. My first week there, I noticed that they had a Toastmasters club um, at the company. I was instantly terrified, and I told myself I'm going to take note of every person that is in the meeting, and I want to make a point to avoid them at all cost. Because Toastmasters are very enthusiastic about having visitors, and so I knew that if I got to be acquainted with any one of them, eventually I would get an invite.
Mm-hmm.
So I avoided that for about a year and a half, and then at the beginning of 2015, I found out that a person that I had gotten to know pretty well at work was the president of the club, and sure enough, she started to invite me. And at first, I said, "There's no way I'm doing that, no way." And you know why I'm not doing it. She was like, "Okay, I get it, I understand," but she
Mm-hmm.
didn't stop. So eventually, I went to one meeting and thought that if I went once, she would just drop it. So I went once, told her, it was fine, but no, thank you. Well, she didn't stop there. So she went to one of the senior directors that I worked with on some projects, and she convinced him to sponsor me for a year in Toastmasters. So he called me into his office one day, made the offer, and when you have a senior director that's asking you to do something as part of your development, you can't say no. So I was I was a little upset because I felt kind of pressured into it, but of course I agreed to it and I said yes.
Mm-hmm.
My plan was to just join and not do anything. Was to come to a meeting a month maybe, and then kind of just fade away. But after thinking about it, I realized that this was a good opportunity because at my last job, I was project manager. So about 80% of my job was communication. And that was on my phone, that was in meetings, that was leading conference calls. And it has started to kind of make me really anxious, being in these situations. So I thought that this would be a great opportunity to actually work on this, to not only to kind of to break this fear, but to also actually build some some better communication skills, which I really needed to do well at my job.
Mm-hmm.
So I made the commitment, and I told myself that I was going to do this. So the first speech that you give in Toastmasters is called the icebreaker. So I thought, well, this would be a good opportunity to talk about stuttering, because at this point, none of my coworkers had really asked me about it, and I hadn't volunteered any information. So I thought that this is a good way to educate them, and to also get out in the open so that I don't feel as self-conscious about it. So I sent out an email to everybody that I knew at work and said, come to this meeting and hear me speak. And ended up being a conference room with standing room only. And after doing that, I felt like a sense of freedom that I had never felt before. And that's when I realized that the thing that's been holding me back the entire time was not my stutter, but it was the fact that I was ashamed of it.
Right.
And so after that first speech, I, pretty much committed myself to Toastmasters, and, went from, and I joined in in March of 2015. So from March, from being afraid to even visit a meeting, to November of that same year, I was in a speech contest. I was a finalist in a speech contest, speaking in front of a ballroom full of people.
My goodness. Derek, that gets me thinking about how in therapy, we often talk about how people who stutter usually are not avoiding stuttering when they avoid it for the sake of avoiding stuttering itself, but
Right.
rather to avoid the feelings they experience when they stutter, the embarrassment, the shame, guilt, anger, whatever those feelings might be. And so what you just shared is right in line with that. And it makes sense that perhaps you got to experience a release or some relief from giving that first speech, being authentically yourself in front of people and opening up about stuttering in a big way.
Yeah.
So this brings me to this brings us to a natural point to talk about your year of fear that you started. And I want you to share about it, and I'm particularly interested in what it was and what you were doing in it, but also what it was like to do something like that in such a public sense.
Well, the year of fear really, it was really based around my experience with Toastmasters, but it involved really at the heart of it. It was me breaking the fear of being me. Because not only did I get heavily involved in Toastmasters, but I started to go to a lot more. Well, not a lot more. I started going to networking events as well. And I just really wanted to just put myself out there and to kind of break that fear of, of just being me and showing up and being judged, and and honestly, the best thing that it did for me is that it showed me that the world is a lot kinder than I thought it was. And I had been hiding myself away, just thinking that the world was full of people ready and waiting to judge me. Which, of course, there are people that are like that, but the vast majority of people that I've met in Toastmasters, at networking events, I mean, it's been the exact opposite of what I expected, and as a result, I've met some of the best people that I could have imagined. And the reason why I wanted to be so public about it is because I wanted other people to experience that, and really not just people who stutter, but everyone, because everyone has fear. And the strange thing that happened after I started to be more open about my fear is that other people started to open up to me as well. I mean, I had so many personal conversations with people at work about their lives and their experiences that I would have never had if I hadn't have been vulnerable with my fear.
And these people were being vulnerable with you about their own private issues.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, and that's interesting. Did you ever read Catherine Preston's book Out With It?
No.
Are you familiar with it? But I think you'd appreciate it. She did something similar. She was very covert in terms of her stuttering experience many years ago, working for a company in England. And hopefully I'm summarizing this right because we'll be sharing this video. But she came out about her stuttering in a very big way. I think it was in an email to the whole office, something like that. And it, like your experience at that first Toastmasters icebreaker speech, it gave her that that first big experience of authenticity and openness and what it leads to. Yeah. And it led to a lot of her coworkers expressing appreciation for her vulnerability and then being vulnerable with her in return.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like kindness, happiness, vulnerability, these things, they don't get used up. By using them, we create more of it.
Right.
Right.
And I think that people are waiting for permission to be able to express these things. But I think that so many of us are guarded, with our thoughts, our feelings, because we are afraid of being judged. So when you see somebody else doing it, it's like, it's almost like it's permission to do it yourself.
Mm-hmm.